In this video, I'm going to provide an overview of the Workflow Designer capability in OpenPages. So as you can see on my screen, I have a business continuity test plan record open. And in the workflow that I'm going to construct, I'm going to assign this user, BCM admin, to a stage in the workflow. And when the workflow ends, I'm going to update the start date and end date of the plan so that it can be updated 1 year from this date. And I'm going to set the workflow onto a schedule so that the workflow will automatically open when the start date is met. So if I go as an administrator to the Solutions Configuration Workflows screen, you can see the different workflows that are provided for this profile out of the box. I'm going to add a new workflow. I'm going to call it BC Test Plan Workflow. It is for the BC Test Plan object, and it is a manual scheduled start workflow. So an auto start workflow will be created upon creation, or the workflow will initiate upon creation. Manual scheduled start is when it's not on creation. So I'm going to add that. And here's my workflow designer. You can see I have a start stage. To add a stage, I'm going to click on this X, drag it down. This will be stage 2. I'll call it test plan execution. And then I'm going to add one more stage here, and this will be the end stage. So I want to create a simple workflow just to show some general capability. I'm going to change the type of this stage to end, and that's how we can identify that the workflow will end at this stage. So I have my 3 stages. Now I'm going to create actions. I can drag the arrow to the second stage. I'm going to call this start workflow. I'm going to add that. So the workflow will initiate. It'll assign. It'll assign the user who's identified here as the assignee for this stage to this stage. My assignee is going to be the owner. The user list is the owner on this record. So BC admin in this example. And in this stage, I can select a view that I want to show to the user at this stage. So if you have multiple views selected or created, then you can select one of those views for the user to see at this stage. I'm going to select this view that I created, and you can also modify the fields that appear on that view. So I might want to hide assignee. I'm going to hide that field, and I want to also have end date as a key field, so that'll be called out on the view. The other thing I can do is that I can add guidance for this particular stage. So guidance, I'll call it demo guidance. So if there's particular instructions you want to convey for a particular stage, then you can identify that here and provide that to the user. So we have a start, it goes to this stage, and then we're going to have an end stage. We're going to call this test plan complete. And so here, if you click on the arrow, you can add conditions. So for instance, if I had several different stages, I could condition which stage would be next in line in the workflow based on fields on the record. And I can also have validations and operations. So I'll create a validation that says that we want this description field to not be empty. So I want the user to fill out that field in order to close the workflow. I'm also going to add an operation. So I want to set the start date. Because if you remember, I said that if I go back to my record, when the workflow ends, I want to update this start date 1 year from now, so that when the schedule runs again, it'll pick up on the start date, and then this workflow can open automatically and assign it to the user that's identified here. So the way to do that is I can add an operation. I'm going to set a field. I'm going to say set start date. And I'm going to add a condition here so that I'm going to set the start date when my frequency is, I think it's called yearly in this instance. So my frequency is equal to yearly. So that would mean that my next start date I would want to be 365 days from this existing start date. So I can add a condition there so that when this field equals yearly, then I can set my start date 1 year from then. So I'm setting the start date. I'm going to base that on the existing start date, and I'm going to add 365 days. And I'll do the same thing for end date. So I am going to set end date. Field on the current object is end date. Field on and adjust by 365 days. So you can see there's a lot of other options that I could go through. The purpose of this video is really just to give a general understanding of things that are available for BCM. So really the best way to understand the full capabilities of workflow is to go about reviewing it in a hands-on approach, is my opinion. So the other thing I need to do is I need to set applicability for my schedule. So what I want to do is when the schedule is running, I want the start date to be equal to the date that the schedule is executing. So if I hit start date is equal to an expression of today, and I can hit save. And then I'm going to set my schedule and there's different ways I can set my schedule. I can set it through a cron expression. I can set it for a recurring or a specified date. So I want this to run on a daily basis to pick up every instance when that start date is the day that the workflow is executing, so that it can launch the workflow for these records that meet the criteria that the start date is the date of the execution of the schedule. So I can set a time as well. So I'm going to hit done. Then I can hit publish, and now I have my workflow set. So there's, just as a reminder, there's 3 things we're going to do. We're going to set this owner here as the assignee for the stage. We're going to, when he's finished with the owner's finished with their review, we're going to have them select an action, and that will change the start date so that when 1 year from now, these start dates will be updated to the for 2021. Okay, so you can see the fields we have here, the guidance we have available. If I go to my home page, you can see I have one task which is related to business impact analysis. Now I'm going to go to my schedule. Now typically you wouldn't need to run this manually, but I don't want to wait for the date. I could set a new date, but for the sake of time, we're going to just manually start the schedule. So the schedule initiated, went through that workflow process, you can see it executed. And now if I go back to my home page screen, you can see there's my new record. So I am the BC admin owner, as you can see here. So you can see that based on that, it assigned me to the stage, test plan execution. And we have our updated guidance, and we have the key items where we called out end date. So now, let's say I don't have anything in description. I save it, and I'm going to say test plan is complete to go to that last stage of the workflow. And if I continue, I'm going to get a validation. It's going to say that I need to fill out this description field. So I fill out the description field. I hit save. Now I'm going to say test plan complete, continue, and here you can see my start and end dates have been updated. So the next time this record will be part of a workflow will be on April 27th, 2021 when that schedule runs on that daily basis. So that's a general overview of the capability of the workflow and the workflow designer. Thank you for your time.